Well, when I found out that I couldn't get pregnant, uh, I just felt like I didn't want to go through the fertility process because it's very expensive and very long and very emotional, so we opted for adoption. We considered one or two, and also considered that if they were siblings, that we would definitely not want to separate siblings.
Well, we started with one, and then when the adoption agency told us that it was a buy one, get one free, you know, we decided two would be a good idea, and that's where we would stop.
When we received the call to go to the Ukraine finally, in my journal, I wrote that it was sort of like my water breaking.
So we were excited and nervous at the same time.
Finally here in 9 months, and now it's time to go ahead and go get the boys. We were in the Ukraine almost 3 weeks, and that was not the original plan.
So when we went to Kiev and had to find our coordinator, we had no physical description of him.
It was like an airport I had never been in before, and I was expecting, somebody to be holding up a sign with our names.
We walked out in shock, and they found
us. They came up to us. So we arrived at the Center for Adoption, which is a big building, and we were taken up to one of the director's offices, and
it was not at all what we were expecting. I mean, I didn't expect to meet dozens and dozens of kids and everything, but they pulled out some books.
What they do is they go to this huge cabinet and they pull out 3-ring binders, and they flip the pages and they show you a picture of children that are available for adoption.
And we were going through, and they obviously must have been paying close attention, because we saw hundreds of pictures in books.
That's where we first saw the pictures of Evan and Nicholas.
So when we first got to the orphanage, we went to the orphanage director's office.
She tried to make us feel comfortable, asking us a few questions and just sort of going over our paperwork. And then it was time to meet the boys. When Vova first came into the director's office, he's very happy, but I think he was really expecting candy or something. Like this was very exciting for him.
He came in and he was just excited. He was full of energy, and he was looking for food or something.
My first thought when Saroja was brought into the office is he's so tiny and he's so serious with his little scrunched up face.
I mean, at 16 months old, most kids are, crawling around, walking around and everything, and he was bundled up and very thin.
I was nervous holding Saroja for the first time.
I was excited, but at the same time, I was very nervous, and I thought he was very fragile.
Once I held him, though, I didn't really want to let go, but eventually we had to. When we visited Vova, he was always so happy to see us, but mostly he was so happy because he could just run and run and run. He was just always running everywhere.
Man, he was pure energy. He was all over the place. He wanted to rock and run and play with balls.
And then guzzling the water from the water bottles that we would bring him. He just always on the go. The more that Blake and I visited the orphanage, Vova was very attracted, very drawn to Blake. And I guess that's that sort of high energy that they both share.
It was, without a doubt, he was expecting us, and so yes, it was pretty cool.
You have to go to court in the Ukraine in order for the country to officially say it's okay for the orphanage to hand these children to you, and you leave their area and go on to the international process. And it went by really quickly. I just remember thinking, wow, that was it. We're already done here. So we hadn't been at the orphanage for a few days because of some paperwork and government agencies that we had to visit. We were told that we wouldn't get to see Saroja because he was sick, and it was because we were feeding him bananas.
We knew it wasn't because of us. We weren't sick, not at all on the trip. Maybe hot, but not sick. So we knew that that was their way of saying, hey, we need antibiotics. And so when we were there, we bought antibiotics and vacuum cleaners for the orphanage.
Which, of course, we were fine with, whatever it took in order for the adoption to move forward. But I was very, very angry that they blamed it on us, and all we gave him was a little bit of water and a little piece of banana.
Well, when you find out anybody's sick, you feel awful, but I mean, here we're adopting him, and when we found out he was sick, we just wanted to help him get better, and so felt awful and felt helpless too.
So on August 3rd, we were finally able to pick up the boys and take them with us and drive away.
We went to court and they gave us all the paperwork, and it was, I mean, we had to be dressed up. That was the only time I think we wore suits and anything like that. And that's when it was all finished. It was really cool, exciting.
So my first diaper experience was literally on the side of the road in the Ukraine, in the dark, in the back seat of a car. And mind you, I had never changed a diaper before in my entire life. So
the first diaper experience was bloody and green. It was not pleasant at all.
after we arrived in Kiev, we were changing a diaper
Every 15 minutes. And we knew he was sick.
You know, I kept saying to Blake, I think something's not right here.
Seeing the blood and the green and everything, it was awful. I mean, it made me cry. It was terrible.
I knew that that just couldn't be right. So the next steps really were to get Blake and the coordinator on this mission of finding a doctor's office that we could go to first thing in the morning. Blake actually took Saroja to the clinic first and left me at the apartment with Vova.
When we first got in, they took us into an exam room. It was fairly quickly they were able to determine what the problem was.
Dr. Gordon said that Nicholas had what was called dysentery. At the time, I didn't know there's several kinds of dysentery, and he had what's called Shigella, which is the worst and can be fatal if not treated properly.
We were taking shifts, and it was just awful.
So my first night with Saroja is probably like nothing anybody would have ever imagined or could imagine. He had what's called a prolapsed rectum, and because of the violent nature of this dysentery and the gas that it builds up, it causes this situation, the prolapse.
It was terrifying. I cried like a baby. I was so scared when they said you might die.
It had happened before Blake took him to the clinic, and maybe happened a couple more times while we were there. So me and the nurse had to stay up all night and hold his little cheeks together to make sure that the prolapse would not continue, because if that would happen and continue and we couldn't hold it in, then he was possibly going to have to be life flighted to a medical center in England.
Ended up using an antibiotic called Bactrim, but there was some question as to whether or not it was going to be effective. So we a lot of sitting and waiting.
He started to respond slowly and to get a little bit better. So in my journal, I wrote that Saroja had peed all over the nurse that next morning, and that was actually, as horrible as that sounds to other people listening, it was actually a really good thing. It meant his body was finally rehydrated. I was so excited, but also kind of overwhelmed when I finally realized I could go home with the boys. As we're getting on the airplane, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really a mom. It's not just this process that you have to go through anymore. It's actually real. They're counting on you.
When we could finally go home, just so excited, just ready to start that life of being a parent and raising a couple of young men.
It was really difficult to say goodbye to Andre once we finally left.
He was so helpful. He was a really, really good person, so it was hard.
When we arrived home for the first time, I felt like finally, we're finally here, and all the difficulty that we had gone through in order to get to that point was worth every minute.
It actually felt permanent, and we knew there was work to be done still in the United States. The adoption process was not over by any means. But we were relieved to be back home, was happy, and to move on and be parents and enjoy having kids.
There were so many angels. Everywhere we went in the trip, there were just people that took care of us and watched over us and really made the experience very positive for us. So we, of course, had to take Saroja to the doctor right away when we got home. We went to Dr. Briggs in Lillington, North Carolina, and
one of the comments he put in the medical records was failure to thrive. He did not think Saroja was going to live.
I can still picture his face. He said, "Nicholas is very, very sick. And we're gonna have to be very careful what we do to make sure he gets better."
Well, Dr. Briggs' plan to get Nicholas healthy was to, one, continue the antibiotics, but he wanted to see him every week. And then was to put him on soy formula.
I felt like it was 2 ounces, either 2 ounces or 4 ounces at a time, every 2 hours. And then come back and see him in 2 weeks and then continue with the antibiotic as well.
He went from being a 16-pound skinny little kid to 30 pounds in a matter of weeks.
We've always told the boys that they were adopted. I don't know that I could pinpoint it to one specific instance, and they also always knew that their middle names were their birth names, and it's just something that we've always talked about with them and shared with them, and anytime they asked questions, always shared with them what happened.
So, and I think the reason why our mom and dad decided to use our given name and make it our middle name is to know that Ukraine is always part of us, that we always have something to hold on to always remember where we have come from, right, the country we're from, and who we are when we were born. And I think our mom and dad did a great job about doing that, and step one was just giving our given name our middle name.
It feels like it's a powerful name. It feels like, not powerful, but it feels like it has worth to it. Like it means something really important to me. I just have a good feeling about that name for some reason.
I would tell anybody that wants to adopt internationally to do it.
Figure out what adoption agency you want.
And make sure that you really have a good understanding of all the paperwork, of the process, and the money that it takes to do it.
Try and stay as organized as possible and be patient. It's not a fast process.
Adoption is not something at all to be ashamed with. Like we were both saying, adoption has very much helped us and has very much molded us to who we are today.
We got chosen by two great parents that we have, and allowing us to be able to start a life in a great country.
It's about making sure that you provide the children everything they need to have their best life and to succeed at whatever it is they want to succeed at.
It's taking a young person and preparing them for life.
Parenthood is all about making sure that you create a family that they want to be a part of.
You know, if I had the opportunity to adopt or not adopt again, I absolutely would do it. I'm very happy.
I'm very happy I chose to adopt. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Climb aboard the SS unknown. We're gonna float away. Don't know where we'll go. We might rock back and forth, but that will not stop us from going. Where we're gonna go.